I think the best lawyers care about their clients as people. We treat their problems like our problems. You have to be transparent with your clients. They have to understand the reality. Communication is essential.
How do you manage that responsibility?
Take it very seriously. It's hard because best lawyers work on cases that they actually believe it.
I was reading this book, My Life in Court by Louis Nizer, and it's like a big book, 500 pages, and it was recommended to me by a professor in law school. He was saying it's this great litigation book, and it was very dense, and pretty much my only takeaway from the book was that at the end, this trial lawyer who had gone through so many different cases says that at the end of every case, he has to empty out his head so this way he can make room for the new information that has to come in. So I'm curious from your perspective, having represented NFLPA, NBA PA, MLB PA, NCAA athletes, how do you make room to hold all that information in your head?
I think I'm genetically lucky in that I have always been able to compartmentalize. And that's what it really is about. Sort of you have all these cases, all this information, and you can't access it all at once. But when I'm working for one client on one matter, I have kind of like a brain tunnel vision. That's what I'm focused on. When I'm then switching gears to another matter, it's like moving into the other compartment. My wife actually complains about this because she feels like I'll be absorbed in something and then not recognize everything else that's going around me. So it's not necessarily the best trait to have for all purposes. She'll say I'm oblivious to the rest of the world, but it's really good for being a lawyer who has many, many clients in terms of the work we do.
Compartmentalization actually comes up quite a lot on this podcast, and usually it's because it's about managing emotions, managing performance, the ability to perform regardless of how you feel, a discipline, a mental toughness. You mentioned it kind of as this genetic trait, but is it fair to say it's a skill that you've honed? How would you categorize it?
So it's a skill that I developed probably as a child. There were lots of things going on in my childhood that I needed to compartmentalize, and again, that turned out to be a good skill for being a lawyer.
You've had to perform in some very high pressure situations, objectively, where the stakes of an individual's reputation or legal rights are on the line, and they put their faith in your hands. How do you manage that responsibility?
Take it very seriously. I think the best lawyers care about their clients as people. We treat their problems like our problems. And I also think that the best lawyers work on cases that they actually believe it. It's hard to take something on that you really don't think is the right thing to do because you may not be very credible then in being an advocate. But I think if you pick the right cases and pick the right clients and you personalize it to yourself, that's really how you exercise that responsibility. I feel as badly if we don't get the results we want as my client does. And I feel as much a high if we get the right results as my client does. And it's that kind of symbiosis that I think helps me carry out that responsibility.
Delivering good news, bad news, obviously two different experiences. You mentioned that there's times where things don't go your way. Independent of how you've managed your own personal feelings around that, we could talk about that. How have you been effective in delivering bad news to a client?
Be open, honest, and don't delay. right? You have to be transparent with your clients. They have to understand the reality. So if something bad happens, you have to explain it to the client. If something good happens, it's easier to explain to the client. But either way, communication is essential. And part of it is also creating the right expectations. If a case is difficult to begin with, you want the client to know that there are risks, there are costs, that all has to be weighed in deciding what to do. So again, to me, it's all about communication. It's very, very important.
When you're managing all of the different personalities that you've worked with, Ron Artest, Tom Brady, NCAA athletes, women's soccer, all of these different, and obviously within the scope of the NFLPA, the NBAPA, MLBPA, etc., you're around a lot of high performers. Are there any particular lessons that have rubbed off on you with them as clients to you as a professional?
There are all different types of athletes. I've worked with many of them. There are all the types of clients I've worked with. What I've noticed in the greatest athlete performers, whether it's a Tom Brady or a Michael Jordan, someone like that, a Tiger Woods. I've worked with all three of them. There really is a common trait, and that is an extraordinary desire to be mentally focused on the objective they are trying to achieve. And also, frankly, the social IQ to be an incredible leader. Each of those athletes obviously had extraordinary talent, but I think there are a lot of people with extraordinary talent in sports. What I think distinguishes those who really go into the GOAT discussion is that they have this incredible mental capacity, maybe like the compartmentalization we were talking about, the ability to focus and also lead in a positive way that others around them will respect, right? Will support, will not feel like they're looking down upon them, but instead embracing them as leaders.
So on Saturday, I just ran this 58-mile ultramarathon. Straight, no headphones. Took me like 10 hours. Raised money for an organization called the Friendship Circle. And immediately after, it's great feeling of relief, but naturally the next question is what's next? And people talk about trying different sports. There's this element of leaving the comfort zone where I think, and I'm curious your opinion, people conflate leaving the comfort zone or confuse leaving the comfort zone with focus. In your experience, in order to build your skill set, right, how have you left your comfort zone but still maintained an element of focus?
What you have to realize first is that no matter how many times you've done things, no matter how experienced you are, there still is an anxiety, a performance anxiety, but an anxiety in doing something a little bit different, doing something new. But that's actually, it's that stretching which makes you better at what you do, right? That challenge to do it. And what you have to realize is the butterflies you might feel just before you're performing or adopting that new assignment actually is giving you the adrenaline, the ability to really apply yourself into that. I mean, one of the reasons I like being a lawyer is because every case is different. There are similarities, but there are new issues, there are new facts, there are new things to master. It might be a new industry you're working on or a whole new set of legal principles that I haven't encountered before. That's actually why I wake up every day liking what I'm doing. If it was the same every day, I'd probably go do something else.
I like how you talked about it from a principle-based approach. When it comes to preparation, right, you were talking about how you come across new legal concepts, issues, and you have to deal with them from a novel perspective. And there's this performance anxiety that comes along with it. Preparation's obviously key. There's a discipline that goes along with that. How have you cultivated discipline, and what are some of your preparation tactics?
Well, first of all, I'm fortunate. I couldn't do what I do. I have a great team around me, fabulous partners, fabulous associates who help me prepare. And because I have many, many different cases going on at the same time, I really rely upon them to get to me what I need to prepare just before a court appearance or an argument or a trial, because I wouldn't have the time to do all that, to sort of cull the universe. So I rely on them to say, okay, here is what you need to prepare with right now. The idea of compartmentalization. Say, okay, now I'm prepping for this tomorrow. That's what I got to focus on, whether it's the next 5 hours or whatever is required to get ready for that, so that when you get on your feet in a courtroom setting or whatever you're doing, you have the readiness to respond to whatever is going to come up. Because the other thing is, there is no way to plan what's going to happen in a courtroom setting. You can prepare for what's going to happen. You can't plan for what's going to happen because something unexpected is going to happen. The judge may ask a question you didn't think of. The witness may say something you didn't expect. There's just no way to predict that with any kind of precision. But if you do the right preparation, you're prepared to respond, to adapt, right? That's really, the skill. People have looked at military history and why the United States military has been so successful compared to other militaries. And one of the things they found is the ability of the sergeant level, the lieutenant level, to adapt to the unexpected and make decisions. In other words, again, their preparation lets them respond to what's happening on the ground. They don't have to follow just some preordained plan, right? Because that plan is not going to be suitable based on what happens. And that's very much what we do as lawyers.
I love how you talk about it from an adaptability perspective, because that in particular, it's difficult to train, but I feel like there's a character that can be forged through the fire if you're willing to put yourself in that type of situation, to learn how to adapt on the fly by being in uncomfortable situations. Is there any particular way that you have honed adaptability, or is it just all the reps?
I think it's just years of doing it, right? Again, you have to get up and perform and do it and be ready. You're not going to be as good at it the first time you do it than the second time you do it. And again, you build up experience as to how to do it, because your preparation prepares you to say, oh, okay, here's how I'm going to approach this issue, or here's how I'm going to respond to this issue, and not be wedded to my plan, right? That's the lawyers who have trouble doing it is because they've memorized what they said, here's what I'm going to say, or here's what I'm going to do, or here's what, and then they have to alter that. If they're still trying to sort of stick to the script, that's when they're going to have trouble.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Inspired. My name is Jonathan Cohen, and I have a quick favor to ask you. If you're getting any value out of this content, please take a second to subscribe to the channel. You help us reach more people, and you can also stay up to date with all the latest content coming your way. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you in the episode. So Jerry Shargell, who I believe you knew,
Yes.
mentor of
He was
mine.
a partner of mine for a little bit.
Yeah, and he's a mentor of mine. He's actually the individual that told me to go be a prosecutor, and because he had seen me once when I was a summer associate at Winston. And he talked about this concept of anchors. This, rest in peace. He talked about this concept of anchors, this ability to have an idea and ask questions stemming from that idea, because in case something like you said happens where the witness says something that you didn't expect or anything like that. I'm curious if you were in the courtroom or any strategies that have worked for you in life for public speaking or anything of the kind. What are some of the preparation tactics or strategies that you use to help optimize your performance for when it's showtime?
You have to have a concept of, here's what I want to accomplish today. Here's what I want to accomplish with this judge. Here's what I want to accomplish with this witness, right? So if it's a witness, you're going to say, here are the 5 things I want this witness to say or establish or support in one way or another. And there may be a lot of ways to get there. Or if you're making an argument to a judge, here are the 5 points I want to make sure I get across to this judge to help persuade her to find the way I want this to come out. So you have to have objectives that you know what you're seeking to accomplish. Again, going back to the military analogy, right? So those lieutenants know our objective is to take that hill, right? Then the question is, how do you get there, right? You have to understand what is your objective today in this part of the case, in this part of it, even or meeting with a client. I'm trying to give advice to this client. Here are the points I want to get across to this client, or if I'm trying to pitch for new business with a client, here are the points I want to get across to convince that client that I'm the right lawyer they should hire for this, right? So you have to have that in your mind.
Have you ever experienced any kind of imposter syndrome? Are there any moments in your career that you can pinpoint that have, or maybe it's just this overwhelming confidence that over time you know who you are? If there's any moment that you could pinpoint in your career where you've experienced a level of imposter syndrome and overcome it, can you take us through that process?
That's not been an issue for me, right? Again, not the most positive characteristic in all ways, but it's helpful as a lawyer to have a lot of self-confidence, and that's not something that I've struggled with.
So then when it comes to building confidence or having established confidence, what does that feel like? If someone right now is struggling with that particular issue, they don't feel as comfortable in court.
I think what they have to do then is identify, okay, what is making me feel that way, right? And then work on it, right? Do I feel that way because I'm not comfortable enough with public speaking? Then maybe they need to do some public speaking training. There are ways to train for that. If they feel like I don't really know this subject matter area, then they need to study that. In other words, they need to figure out what work can they do to give them the confidence to carry out. Now, if they can't overcome that with preparation, with doing that, then maybe they're in the wrong job. Every job is not for everybody, right? If I became a medical doctor, I probably have imposter feelings all the time because I don't know that I would trust myself physically as a surgeon. Like, I'm not comfortable in my physical prowess, to hold a scalpel. Maybe I'll make a mistake. I don't know that I can overcome those feelings, but I didn't try to become a doctor, right? So part of it is you may not be in the right place for what your confidence and skills are, but you need to have that confidence to really exceed in what you're doing.
And there's obviously an element of discipline that comes along with your level of performance and commitment. And you talked about believing in what you're doing. But in my experience, the believing in what you're doing isn't necessarily enough. There's a level of skill that has to come along with it. How have you honed your discipline?
First, you got to become the best lawyer you could be. So you have to really take law school seriously and work and learn the advocacy skills of a lawyer if you're litigating in that way. Then it doesn't stop. You know, your years as a young lawyer, there could be lots of places to learn. The more senior lawyers around you will be teaching you. If you're in a good firm, they're going to be having programs to help you refine your skills. You have to keep acquiring and developing those skills. And it really doesn't stop. You know, I'll find new things I need to learn about today, right? You know, now I have to understand something called AI, right? That wasn't a knowledge set that I needed 2 years ago, right? So things always change, and you have to meet that change by developing the skills you need for what you do.
I'm glad you brought up AI because I was going to go in that direction. I posed a similar question to Michael Elkin when he was on the podcast. How do you see AI shaping the legal industry?
So it's going to make the more routine legal tasks easier to accomplish, less expensive to accomplish for clients, and really help the productivity of lawyers in that regard. It's not going to be a substitute for legal analysis or legal judgments or trial skills or negotiation skills or any of the things that lawyers are most highly compensated for and why we like to do what we're doing. But there are a lot of tasks that AI can deal with, right? You know, they in a very, very quick way. And then the key is you still can't completely trust it, in my view. You then have to have real lawyers look at even the routine results and then probably adjust it and refine it to come out, you know, adapt it for what you need. But it's going to make the profession different in terms, especially for younger lawyers, more junior lawyers. I shouldn't say younger, but it should be any age. But in terms of less experienced lawyers, tend to do a lot of those more routine tasks. It's going to make their lives, I think, actually better because they're going to be able to work with AI to reduce the time they have to spend on that and get trained to do more sophisticated lawyering beyond that.
Has it impacted your practice at all to this point?
A little bit. You know, again, it's some of those routine things. It has not really made, I would say, a dramatic difference yet. But you can see it coming. When we do things like massive document reviews for discovery and reviewing, you know, 100,000 emails, right, to look for the things that you really need that are relevant in the case, AI is going to make that a lot quicker and cheaper to do than if you have to use people to initially do that calling. That had already happened even before AI. There had been sort of early efforts to use computer power to sort of do that, but AI takes that to a whole new level in terms of tasks like that. You can see big differences on.
So when it comes to junior lawyers, maybe you could offer some insight into what skills those junior lawyers could double down on.
Well, that really hasn't changed all that much, right? You know, you have to first of all learn to be good writers of legal advocacy. There are skills to doing that. It's different from writing a poem or even maybe writing a research paper in college. And you know, that's a skill that needs to be learned and refined. You'll need to learn how to be good on your feet as an advocate, to make arguments, to respond to questions, how to treat a court, how to respond to a judge. Those are skills that have to be learned. You need to learn to be a good questioner and a good listener, because a good questioner is always a good listener. It's not somebody following a script and say, okay, that's my next question. I'm just going to ask it. Whatever the answer is, go to the next question. You have to listen to what the answer is. What the answer is going to tell you what your next question should be. So all those skills are things that have always been true of litigators, still true of litigators, with or without AI. AI is not going to tell you what next question to ask. AI is not going to tell you, how to make your advocacy the most effective and understandable, and really tell a story in your advocacy that the decision maker can understand.
And so you talked about questions in terms of obviously listening. In your experience, what makes for an effective question?
So we have two types of questions as lawyers. You have your own witnesses on direct examination, and then you have cross-examination. So different types of questions, different legal rules apply. Direct examination is really preparation. It's going over with your witness in advance the questions you're going to ask so that the witness is prepared, and organizing it in a way that will tell the story you want to tell, that will be understandable to the jury or the judge. So it's really shaping the story, deciding the order of the questions. The questions themselves are not that difficult because they have to be fairly open-ended questions. It's a story. What happened next? What did you do there? That's not the hard questioning. The hard questioning is cross-examination. Cross-examination is all about deciding, one, what points can you make with this witness? That's number one. So you have to go with a plan. These are the points this witness can testify to on the cross-examination that will be helpful to me. Then you have to look and say, what tools do I have that I know I can get the witness to truthfully answer the questions to make the points I want to make? So if you have a document where the witness has admitted something, that's a great tool. You should be able to get the witness to say that because you have a document to confront them with. If you have a deposition the witness has taken where they made admissions, that's a great tool because you know that if you ask the witness the question and they don't give the same answer, you can show the deposition and confront the witness with what they've said before and do it. You want to be able to lock them down. It is very hard to cross-examine in an area where you don't know what the witness has to say or is going to say. So generally speaking, you only want to go into those areas if you don't care what the answer is. So what does that mean, right? Well, there's some areas that if the witness doesn't give you the answer you want, it's going to be obvious to the jury that the witness is lying. So you don't really care, or to the judge, whether they give. So if if your point is to establish that the moon is in the sky, okay, and you have to prove that, and you ask the witness, is it true that the moon is in the sky, revolving, around the earth? The witness says no, and it's your adversary. You don't really care. The jury's going to know the witness is lying, so that's okay. That you could, sort of coerce the witness into telling the truth because if they don't, you don't care. But otherwise, you need to be able to lock down the witness.
In the beginning of the podcast, we were talking about compartmentalization as a focus or an attribute that's helped you be effective. Do you attribute any of your success to any other characteristics or attributes that you've trained over the course of your career?
I think a lot of my success comes from making their problems my problems and having them appreciate that and knowing that I'm not doing what I do in just a transactional sense, well, so they pay me money, so I'm their lawyer, so okay, I have to represent them. But having them believe that I really care about their problems, not because I'm pretending, but because I actually really care. I wake up in the morning and I take a shower and I might be thinking about my client's problems because that's how I feel about them. I'm just struggling for a solution. That makes me a good lawyer they trust, but it also makes me a good advocate for them because when a jury or a judge hears me talk about the problem, they know, they can sense that I actually sincerely believe in what I am advocating to them. Not that, again, that I'm just paid to get up there and say something. And, so, okay, don't believe the lawyers, right? But, that I think has helped make me successful.
Because you've taken on such prominent cases, and particularly in the segment of NIL, name, image, and likeness, and namely with the NCAA, that is a landmark precedent that has been set as a result of your advocacy. What does that mean to you to have yourself be the type of individual who has helped transform an entire industry?
I take pride in the cases, in particular, in which the results have had a great positive, at least in my view, social impact, right? Beyond the specific clients I might be representing at that time. You don't get that many opportunities to do that. I've been really fortunate to have a few. The cases against the NCAA college sports, I think, is one of those because the additional financial compensation and benefits these athletes can earn is going to be life-changing for lots of athletes who come from poor backgrounds. Many of them come from communities of color. There are a lot of reasons why those cases are going to have a big positive social impact, in my view. The equal pay case I brought for the women's national team in soccer is another case I feel that way about because it was great to get those fabulous women equal pay, but what it did for the issue of equal pay for females in general as kind of a issue, is an issue I believe in, is again something that I think has had a positive social impact. My cases on free agency, that I won free agency football and in basketball, again, sort of changed the whole future fabric of those sports. The case I did for Oscar Pistorius to let a disabled athlete be able to compete with able-bodied athletes set kind of a mark to transform that issue of giving disabled athletes those. So those are the cases that really move me. I really just been fortunate to have the opportunities to have those type of cases, to have those type of clients, to do those things. And not just me, but with these fabulous teams I've had on the cases who have worked together. We all achieved that. And the clients themselves made that possible, right? None of that happens unless those incredible women on the national team stood up and made that happen, okay? You can't do it yourself, but to be a part of it is something that I take a lot of pride in, and I'm grateful for have had the chance to do that.
You've not just transformed the fabric of the sports, but like you said, the social impact and the social fabric. Like, you move the needle for everyone. And as impactful as that is, like there's this element of unity that comes along with it, right? I think in leadership, you have two different types. You have, people that unite against a cause, and then you have people that unite for a cause. And you talked about some of the qualities of leaders that you've worked with, or high performing athletes more accurately, that you've worked with, and I guess leaders in the ideas of Michael Jordan and Tom Brady. You mentioned a team that you work with. What are some of the leadership qualities or strategies that you've implemented that have allowed you to achieve these disproportionate results?
So, one of the strategies I think is important for a leader is not just to command, but to empower. Find people who are very good and let them know they have your confidence, and let them make decisions themselves that they take possession of, that they take responsibility for, and really to communicate and develop a consensus of what we're doing. I think that is much more effective leadership than just saying, okay, here's what we're going to do today. You do this, you do this, you do that. Meeting over, let's go. Right? And I don't think that's a very effective way. I think it's very important as a leader to recognize and appreciate what all your team members do. People need to feel that when they put in a great effort, it's recognized, that it's called out, that people say thank you, right? That's, I think, a really important part of leadership in terms of this. And it's also important as a leader to listen, just like it's important to listen when you're questioning. Other people might have terrific ideas that you didn't think of, and you don't want them to feel intimidated that, if they have a bad idea that's rejected, that means they should be afraid to offer their ideas, right? Because nobody is going to have all good ideas, right? Not all my ideas are going to be good ideas, but you have to be willing to feel that your ideas will be listened to and respected, to encourage you to offer them. And that's the only way we find out what those good ideas are. So I think those are all different leadership characteristics that work in a lot of different settings.
Do you have any clients or experiences that in particular influenced your leadership style or your performance?
I had the great privilege to have the late Gene Upshaw be my client for many years, executive director of the National Football League Players Association, Hall of Fame NFL player, a fabulous leader of men and others. And he really, the examples he set, the tone he set, watching him as he listened and empowered others sort of taught me a lot about leadership in terms of that. So that would be one particular individual I would single out that comes to mind. But there have been many. I learn all the time from my clients. They were fabulous leaders in pulling together an entire group of people to operate in unison for a cause, even though, there could be disagreements among them. They don't all think exactly alike. They're all different people, but they had that ability to reach out to their teammates, to their fans, to their sponsors, to speak in a way that taught me a lot about how to communicate as a leader. And that's more recent in my career. So I've had continual experiences in learning from others about leadership.
I've had an awesome time sitting down here with you today. I've learned quite a lot, and to take in your experience firsthand after years of knowing who you are, studying your career, and learning lessons from your advocacy and your ability to stand up for what you believe to be right. There's a question that I pose to all my guests that I'd like to pose to you. If the future version of yourself from 10 years from now were to fly in and offer you some advice in order to get there, what do you think he would say to you?
Make sure that you also spend the time you can maximizing the joy of your family. And because those opportunities do not repeat themselves. And as much as I love my work, as much as I am inspired by what I do, and as hard as I work, I always give equal priority and emphasis to finding time to be with my grandchildren, to be with my family, to get that personal joy that you really can't find anywhere else.
So then I have one more question for you. Presence is another theme that comes up on this show. I mentioned that I ran all those miles without headphones. The idea is to cultivate presence. How have you cultivated presence in your life?
I like to think that my focus on my clients and my family and devoting myself to sort of a constant set of values about the importance of social justice, the importance of expanding opportunity, the importance of making a difference a little bit every day, sort of grounds me, gives me that presence.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jeffrey Kessler, thank you so much for your time today, sir.
Thank you so much. It's been fun. Thank you.
Awesome. My name is Jonathan Cohen, and this is Inside the Inspired.